Hey everybody, this is Dalton Macemore. I wanted to do another video for my YouTube channel. I know I've been absent for a while. That was mainly for two reasons. Number one, I'm lazy, and I just didn't really do it. The second reason is I didn't really have a clear idea as to like the types of videos I wanted to put out on a consistent basis. I felt like my ideas was kind of sporadic and I didn't have a clear direction, but now I feel like I do, so I wanted to continue to make these to maybe help inspire people, maybe just share with y'all some of my mindsets that's helped me, and then maybe it'll help some other people. So what I want to talk about for this video is the idea of regret. I want to talk about like what regret is and how to stop regretting and realizing regret for what it really is. First off, regret is, we'll talk about what it's not. Regret is not simply admitting that you're wrong. You know, a person can admit that they're wrong, but still they won't necessarily regret it. And also, secondly, regret is not simply learning from the past. You can, just as a person can admit that they're wrong while not regretting, they can also learn from the past while not regretting. The regret that I'm talking about, and I think that many people struggle with, is this type of harsh criticism of yourself, of your past decisions or past actions. It's not just simply, admitting that you're wrong or just trying to learn from past mistakes. It's more of a harsh criticism of almost like you're degrading yourself, you're judging yourself, kind of like that, and that can really get people down and out, and that's the type of regret that I'm talking about here. So that's what regret really is, and so don't think just because you shouldn't regret, don't think that you can't learn from your past, and don't think that you should never admit that you're wrong. If you are wrong, you should admit that, but what I want to be talking about is why we shouldn't regret, why we shouldn't have that harsh judgment of ourselves, of our past actions. And the number one reason, or one of the reasons why we shouldn't regret, is because it's just unfair. We're not being fair to ourselves. Anytime we see a person as a judge, or anytime we want to judge something, it's important to be fair. Everyone wants to be judged fairly. Just like any good judge is a judge who is fair. And that means the judge would take into account all the different elements that went into a situation, and he would assess those and take them into account, and then make a decision based off of that. That would be what a fair judge would do. But regret is you being a judge of your past and judging it unfairly, because you don't realize that back then you don't know what you know now, and also more than likely your state of emotions was different at that point in time than they are now. And so since our decisions are also heavily influenced by our emotions, if we're not currently experiencing the same emotional state that we were in when we made that past decision, then it's easy to poke holes in our past actions because we're no longer experiencing those emotions. However, if you was to go back and experience those same emotions, you would see why you made the decisions you made, because our emotions and how we're feeling at the time weigh heavily on how we act, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. As long as we don't let them run rampant, our emotions are there to help guide us, and it's part of who we are. So, number one, you're not in the same emotional state that you were in, and like I mentioned before, you don't have the same knowledge back then that you now have. And so taking those two things into account, you can look back and say, well, if I'd have known what I know now, I might have acted differently. But even as far as that goes, you still can't say that you would have acted differently, because you still have to consider the emotional dimension, your emotional state at that time. So, but regardless, even if a person does say, well, if I knew back then what I now know, I would have acted differently. That's just simply learning from the past. But regret is when you kind of go into that downward spiral of judging yourself, being hard on yourself, and putting yourself down. And that's just stupid, because you're doing that because you it's like you're assessing yourself, you're criticizing yourself for not having things that it was impossible to have at that time, namely knowledge that you only had access to now. You didn't have access to that knowledge back then. So you're judging yourself based on something that's impossible for you to have achieved anyway, and blaming yourself because you didn't achieve it, even though it was impossible. So that's all I had to say about the first part of why you shouldn't regret, because it's not being fair. It's not taking everything into account. And like I said, it's not just a knowledge issue. Even if you had the knowledge you now have and can go back, like I said, your emotions would probably be different. So it might even cause you to still make the same decision. So, secondly, the reason why we shouldn't regret is because it's just irrational. For you to look on a past decision, and let me back up. Who we are, the people that we are, the persons that we are, is an accumulation of our past. I think everybody would agree with that. We are who we are at this point because of the things that have happened in the past. Namely, we were born with certain genetics, and we've had certain past experiences that shape us and mold us, and that we can remember, and that guide our belief structures and our actions and all that. So our past is what makes us up, is the accumulation of our past experiences. So to look back at one of those experiences or decisions, and to say, well, I wish it was different. It's almost like saying, if you have 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. If you take one of those numbers out, you don't have 3 anymore. Just like you look back at your past, if each past experience, if you, who you are now, the person you are, is an accumulation of your past experiences, if you take just one of those experiences out and change it, you've essentially changed the person. So you've changed yourself. So really what regret means is that you wish you were someone else. You wish you were a different person. And now the problem with that is the person that you wish to be doesn't exist. And even worse, you don't even know what that person would be like if he or she did exist. And so essentially you're wishing that you were a non-existent person, and you have no idea what that person would be like. And you're feeling bad because you're not that person. It's essentially what regret is. And it is irrational. It's stupid. And so, number one, regret is not being fair. Anytime you judge something, you want to be fair about it. And looking back and judging yourself harshly because you didn't do something that was impossible to actually do or achieve, that's not being fair. Secondly, it's irrational. You're wishing to be a non-existent person, and you don't even know who that person would be if they did exist. So that's my take on regret. If you have any comments or anything, just feel free to share it in the comments section. Look forward to more videos like this. And I enjoyed sharing this with y'all, and I hope y'all got something out of it. Thank you, and see you in the next video.